Hello, Bethel family. This is Pastor Brandon. Thank you for joining us this week for our next lesson in our small group series dealing with Hebrews chapter 11 and considering faith. We're continuing to grow our faith and consider different areas of how our faith is challenged. This week, we're going to talk about our spiritual battles that we're facing. We've been working our way through Hebrews 11, and we've been seeing God deliver his people, how God used Moses, how Moses' parents had faith, and then how they escaped, and how God demonstrated his greatness. This week, we're jumping to the Battle of the Promised Land. So we're leaving the Exodus, and now we're all the way into the book of Joshua, specifically chapter 6. But in Hebrews chapter 11, we're going to look at verse 30 today that says, "By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days." I want to just focus in there on God's power over the city of Jericho. The city of Jericho was a powerful city. We can go in and read the description of the greatness of the city. Remember, the spies are going to go into the land. They're going to see Jericho. They're going to see giants. They're going to see these great clusters of grapes and large people and a place of blessing, a land that flows with milk and honey. They're going to see all of those things. And the city of Jericho is just across from the crossing of the Jordan River, and this is going to be their first conquest. This is going to be the first real battle in the land, and this is an important place. But how are you going to conquer a great city with giant walls when all you are is have been a nomadic people for 40 years, wandering in the wilderness, and now you're supposed to fight and lay siege to this big city? We don't have catapults, we don't have tanks, we don't have bombs that are going to be able to blow all these things up. So what's going to happen? I've watched some of those Ancient Aliens things, and I remember the one about how the people of Israel knocked down the walls of Jericho. They believe, and the Ancient Aliens thing, that the trumpets were somehow magnified by the Ark of the Covenant, and this was there was like an alien wind that came out. There's all kinds of crazy theories about how all of this works. I'm going to link a video that I found very encouraging and helpful about how the walls of Jericho fell. So that I'll put that down in the comment section. That way you can watch that. It's a very helpful video dealing with the historicity of Jericho. We believe Jericho happened. Jericho is a real place. This isn't just a children's story where magic weapons did magic things. This story is about how God is going to lead his people and begin the conquest of the land of Israel, and how he is going to deliver them and show them that they need him more than they need their own strength. He's going to clearly explain that this way of battle is unusual. He's going to explain it, and it's going to seem strange. God is going to speak in Joshua chapter 6. The scriptures say in Joshua chapter 6, verses 1 through 5, "Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And the Lord said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him." When we read this and see God's plan laid out, it seems like a scary plan. But what are they going to do? They've crossed the Red Sea. They've crossed the Jordan River. They've set up remembrances. They're trusting in God, and they're going to go and conquer the land. And so from that conversation at the beginning of Joshua chapter 6, Joshua then goes and tells the leaders. The leaders then get everybody together, and they immediately put the plan into action. But put yourself in their shoes for a minute. I'm going to walk around a city, and on the 7th day, we're going to walk around 7 times, and then we're going to scream. The walls are going to fall down, and then we're going to go up. This seems like a crazy plan. But what is amazing to me is that in all of that discussion of the plan, there's no questioning of God. As you look through all of chapter 6, they just go and execute the plan. The walls fall down. God gives some more instructions about the destruction of the city and what they are to do. But God is going to demonstrate that He is good and He is great, and the people of Israel are going to trust Him. And in one sense, to me, that is a mind-boggling plan, because if I'm putting together a game plan to fight a battle, it's not going to be march around the city. I'm going to want some big weapons. I'm going to want some big meteor to fall on them. I want to see God do something amazing. But He does something amazing, but He still has the people of Israel go in and conquer. He ultimately defeats the enemy, but He is working with them, and the people of Israel are expected to obey in this conquering of the land. They had a task to do, and God was going to encourage them and help them along the way. And if they trusted in His plan, that was the way that every battle was supposed to go, that He was going to win the battles for them. Because He's going to go on and say, it's not about how many people are in your army. One person is going to turn to flight 10. 10 is going to fly 100. 100 are going to turn away 1,000. God doesn't need great strength because He is the creator of the universe. He is the one that holds all things together and by whom all things consist in Colossians chapter 1. That's our God. He does those things, and He is going to work on behalf of the people of Israel. It's one thing for us to consider the history of the story of Joshua in the Battle of Jericho, but as we seek to make application here, I believe that we have some key components of how we fight our spiritual battles today that we can learn based off of what we read in Hebrews chapter 11 that is interpreting Joshua chapter 6. In Hebrews chapter 11, it's interesting, we don't find the name Joshua. We don't find his name in Hebrews 11, but we know he was the active leader of this army. Ultimately, what this says to me is God does not care about the greatness of your person. He doesn't need you to be famous. He doesn't need you to be powerful. He just wants to use you. And sometimes I believe we are afraid of fighting spiritual battles because we think, well, I can't fight like them. I don't have as great faith as that person. I don't have the great faith like those heroes that I've read about in Hebrews chapter 11. But do you remember the different things that we've talked about as we've studied each of these characters? Were the characters in the Old Testament perfect? No. But God used them anyways. And God can use us. We might not be famous. We might not be powerful. We might not have anything. But our God is the God and the creator of the universe. There is none like Him. And He offers us His plan, His provision, His strength, His direction in order to fight our own spiritual battles. Sometimes I believe we wallow in defeat because we might think, well, that famous preacher or that famous person, they really walk with God. Can I tell you, when I was a camper, when I used to go to a camp, it was called Southland Christian Camp, much like our teenagers that go to the wilds, where there's a college-age counselor working with our young people. I remember being a camper thinking, man, those counselors don't sin. They walk with God. They know God. They help me grow. They do all of these things. And then eventually I became a counselor, and I realized they were growing. Those kids are growing just like I need to grow. I'm not perfect. I fight battles. I struggle. So many times I've met with pastors and think, when I was younger, I thought, man, those pastors are amazing. They just really walk with God. They don't struggle with anything. They've never struggled with sin. I became a pastor. And I'm just another guy. When all of us, each of us, face spiritual battles and trials, what we could see, maybe a victory at the end, was through a process of long, hard toil that someone had to go through. Maybe there were some victories and some defeats. Maybe there was some questioning and wondering of God as they were it felt like they were walking around in a circle, not seeing anything done. The people of Israel had to walk for 7 days and then 7 times around. Do you think that it was on that 7th time around that some of those guys in that army were thinking, all right, let's see what happens? I'm sure there were. But God demonstrated his love to his people and showed them that he was on their side and he could win the victory for them. They just needed to trust him. And that's really something that's critical. So when we think about verse 30, it's not about your title, your position, or anything. It's that God's on our side. We're his children and he loves us. So as we seek to make application about this, I'm reminded of some verses in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 through 6. The Bible says, "Now I, Paul, myself beseech you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who in presence am base among you, but being absent am bold toward you. But I beseech you, that I may not be bold when I am present, with that confidence wherewith I think to be bold against some, which think of us as if we walked according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled." Paul, I believe, is making in that text a very similar statement to what the author of Hebrews in chapter 11, verse 30 is saying. Paul is going to say that we fight spiritual battles. And he says, look, I know you think of me as a small person and I'm not a great speaker. I'm going to come and I'm going to challenge you, but I want to remind you that it's not about my physical stature that wins battles. It's about my God. The weapons that I have, they're not fleshly, they're not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Here, God is showing us that the battles that we fight with the flesh cannot be won with fleshly means. It's not just because I've got strong willpower that I'm going to overcome temptation and sin. It's because I've got a great God. And by faith, I believe he can help me. So that begins to change my thoughts. That begins to change my attitudes and actions. Because we need his power and strength that is able to destroy the strongholds of doubt and sin in our lives. Our warfare isn't to be fought just by our own strength and power. It's to be fought by God's strength. And so we're reminded of Ephesians 6, verse 10. "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might." Do we believe that God's weapons and plans are greater than our own? You might be thinking, well, I'm struggling with this. I'm discouraged. I'm defeated. I've been down in the dumps. I feel like I can't get any spiritual victory. I feel that my life is just, I'm dealing with constant temptations. I'm dealing with sins. There's problems in my family. There's problems in my home. What do I do about this? Somebody has to fix it to me. Can I tell you, God has offered you a plan. Will you seek to know and obey his plan? Victory in life's battles and fighting our spiritual battles is only going to come when we fight by God's plans and direction. And we must accept those plans by faith. You may be sitting there thinking, my problem is too big, God can't help me. In the New Testament, Jesus is going to cast out demons. There's one that we know as the maniac of Gadara, who has a legion of demons living inside of him, who had cut himself, lived in the cemetery, amongst the tombs, ran everywhere naked, seemed to be crazy, but Jesus could heal him. Paul is going to talk to the churches and say, listen, some of you used to be liars, extortioners. You used to be sexually immoral. He's going to go on in many different things. He's going to name homosexual. He's going to name some of those different things. Such were some of you. But God has changed you. Friend, we still have the same God today, and we need His plans, and we need His power. If we are going to overcome temptation, if we are going to overcome spiritual strongholds, if we are going to see these battles fought and won, we must do it by God's plan. I'm sure Joshua had a few days in there when he got back at night and was thinking, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work, but you do, and I'm trusting you. There may be some days that you face that way, but you can face them by God's strength and by God's grace. You can see victory in your home. You can see victory in your marriage. You can see victory over temptation and sin. Whatever it is, God's plan is better. Our weapons are not just fleshly weapons. Our weapons are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Do we believe that about God? Oftentimes when I counsel with folks, I've found that they've built into their lives years of inconsistent spiritual behavior. They show up at church, they say they pray, they say, I pray and I ask God to take it away. It doesn't go away, and so God doesn't care, God doesn't love me. That's not true. You don't think about what God thinks. You've built into your pattern a pattern of entertainment. You've built into your life a pattern of whatever it may be, and you're wondering why you're discouraged and defeated. It's because you've never genuinely trusted God and His plan. And it takes knowing His Word, taking His Word, and applying it in our lives. If we want to see spiritual victory, we've got to follow God and obey, because He's got a plan for us. God defeated the walls of Jericho. And then He said, go up in and defeat the people, the citizens of Jericho. God works in and through us, and He fights for us. He just wants us to go along with Him. Victory is won by depending on Him for strength and power. So let's do that this week. Let's trust God. Let's believe God that His way and plan is best. That His provisions for us, the weapons that He gives to us, are mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. If He can defeat Jericho, if He can work in the New Testament, the same God is still at work today, and we can claim His promises. So let's go and fight by faith. I hope that you've got some thoughts to go on, and that this week's devotions you'll dig in and think about how you fight the battles in front of you. So let's dig in. Let's work with our small groups. Let's really communicate this week about the burdens that we face, the difficulties that we go through, and how we can encourage each other to take steps of faith, take steps of obedience. Let's really grow. Let's go deep in the Word, and let's fight by faith. Thanks for listening. Lord willing, we'll see you soon. Have a great week and dig into the Scriptures. If you've got any questions, let us know. But we are so thankful that you've been a part of each of these lessons so far. Have a great week.